Welcome back to the show, everybody. XRP, stablecoin, global stablecoin. We're going to get into that conversation with Linda P. Jones, the Wall Street veteran. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I have got Linda P. Jones with me today, and it is going to be a barn burner. Before we get started, let me show you this. Get your stuff off of the exchanges. Now is a time to not mess around. I have done exactly that, especially with my XRP. I know Linda P. Jones is very big on getting things off the exchanges too. One of the ways I do that is Ledger, and there's a link underneath the video, so make sure you check it out before you get out of here today. All right, we welcome back to the show. It's Linda P. Jones. How are you today, Linda?
I'm doing great, Brad. How are you?
I'm doing really fantastic. We had a great conversation offline before we got started today. I tell you, I think the audience is going to want every single bit of this. Should we get started?
I think we should.
Here we go. Okay, so we start right here, Linda. This is a post from Costa Rica Kelly's, a Hall of Famer from the channel here, and Watcher Guru. Tether USDT co-founder says US Terra crash will probably be the end of most algorithmic stable coins. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I'm of the belief that there's a problem that has to occur to bring in the solution. Mm-hmm. We've seen this over and over, and I believe that when Terra had its problems, that was to show us an algorithmic stablecoin or something that is not backed by anything could have major problems. And that gave us the beginning of this introduction into another problem, which I believe will happen with Tether, which will bring about a different form of stablecoin that is regulated. How about you?
Well, I think you bring up such a good point here because, if people remember when Terra collapsed, we saw a brief flash crash of USD Tether, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And I have to believe, look, I am a cynic at heart here when it comes to these kinds of things. And, what I felt like we saw was not only the destruction of Terra to show everyone that, see what happens when you have all this unregulated money, right?
Exactly.
See what happens. Do you want this to be regulated or not? And I think USD Tether is certainly in the crosshairs. Now, we know USD Tether has made many comments after Terra collapsed. Hey, we've got our reserves. They're all right here. We have them. Well, trust us, we have them. But you know what? There's something missing, and it's being licensed and regulated. That's what I'm seeing, Linda, and they're not.
That's the ultimate goal, I believe, is to bring in the licensing and regulation so that they can say this is a trusted currency. Mm-hmm. This is something that is approved by governments, regulated, something that each country having its own stablecoin will be able to use. And I think that's where we're going.
I really do too. And to your point, I think we're going to see some more evidence of exactly where that is going. And in fact, let's talk about this because, Stellar is now a MoneyGram partner and enabling USD coin remittances. Your thoughts on this, Linda?
Well, I believe that Stellar will be the stablecoin for the everyday person, for the consumer to do transactions. And perhaps we have XRP in a stablecoin version to do that more at a commercial or banking level.
I think that is so well said. I certainly see it like, front end and back end, XLM, more like the front retail, everyday stuff, and XRP serving the back end of the wholesale system. I certainly see something like that taking shape. Now, what's interesting for people who don't know is just very quickly is XRP obviously partnered with MoneyGram a couple years ago, had to dissolve that relationship because of the SEC suing them, but the regulators certainly got to take a look under the hood in real time and saw the success of XRP's real application.
That's right. And we know that XRP and XLM came from the same people. It's brother sister currency. I believe there was a point where they realized that central banks and governments were going to be using XRP and they needed something else. They had to have something for the consumer to use. And that's when XLM Stellar Lumens was born at that point with Jet McCaleb.
Very good point to make there. And I want to remind people too that, you know, the couple little differences between that brother sister is that back in 2019, when we were actually at Swell in Singapore, the Ripple event there, I remember that Stellar burned their escrow. So they no longer have an escrow to contend with, and they are a nonprofit, which kind of aligns with a systemically important designation. But I don't want to give away too much because we're going to get into that conversation in just a second. Let's look at the work that's really being done really quickly here, Linda. It's the CBDCs and fiat-backed stablecoins, really talking about R3 here and their advancements that they've made. They're doing so much, as we know. And then it brings us into this SWIFT, who obviously is working with R3 as well, working very closely to achieve instant frictionless cross-border payments. But Linda, you and I both know this is a messaging system.
That's right. It's a one-way messaging system right now. And that's why the ISO 20022 system was so amazing when that came into being, because that actually is a two-way system where they're talking back and forth. People don't realize that SWIFT transactions have an error rate of about 6%, which is enormous. So what happens is the money gets sent and there's an error and they have to go and find where the problem was and fix it. Whereas when you have something like the XRP ledger, there's zero error and it can talk to each other and they know exactly what the instructions are and they know what to do. So it's a whole next level that we're going to.
And Ashish Burla, the general manager of RippleNet, really just touted everything that you said, that what they're doing is even bigger than SWIFT already because they solved the messaging problem and the delivery and settlement of the value transfer itself. Pretty remarkable. Now, Linda, I have to say, this next part here is where I want people to really dig in with us here. Because this article I covered, it's so important because it talks about Bank of England to take rescue role if stablecoin collapses. Now, we saw Terra collapse. We know that the crosshairs are on USD Tether. I can only imagine the bloodbath in this market if USD Tether is collapsed. I can only imagine. But when I think of what's going on here in this Bank of England article, it really hits something that I've been talking about for more than 2 years on this channel. The Treasury said yesterday that a failure of a systemically important stablecoin, which is a type of cryptocurrency, could pose a wide range of financial stability as well as consumer protection impacts. Systemically important, Linda.
That's right. It is systemically important, and I think that we're going to get to a systemic level to end the old financial system that's going to usher in this new financial system that's going to be completely revamped and different and better.
Well said. Well said. And I agree with you. I don't believe you can usher in a new financial system without absolutely jamming the old one right in the mud, right? I mean, it's just, I just don't understand how else it happens. I mean, when I look back at, what was it, the Weimar Republic, right? And what happened there, what was it, World War II, just after World War II, and what happened to that money, it was just complete crash. Everything went kaput, right? I mean, how do you have a great reset without a great collapse? I just don't understand it.
That's right. I mean, you can look at, what's happened in Venezuela, for example. I mean, with all the money printing, the devaluation of their currency, the rise of their stock market like crazy, but also just collapses, shortages, inflation, things that we're experiencing now, literally other countries have already experienced.
Absolutely. That's a great point, because everyone in the larger countries, larger economy countries like the US always think, oh, well, that happened over there, Linda. That won't happen here. That happened over there. Well, I tell you, somebody's thinking about it happening, because this right here in this same article says it's said that the failure of a systemic firm that operates a stablecoin could threaten the continuity of services critical to the operation of the economy. In other words, financial stability risk, right? And this is Her Majesty's Treasury talking about this in the Bank of England for stable coins. Now, in a few moments, we're going to hear from James Wallace talk about central bank digital currencies and commercial bank stable coins. And that makes me think of this statement here, because what I'm seeing is analogous to the early days of money in the United States, when the Fed was introduced and then the banknote was introduced to create a uniformity of money to be used everywhere. I always remind people of I owe my soul to the company store. That was about the coal miner that worked in a town that got paid by money that was created by the coal mining company, and they could only spend it at the company store. And if I wanted to move my family to another state or part of the country, I had no money because I couldn't spend it somewhere else. In comes the banknote. What I see today is the next iteration of that moment in the digital world. Your thoughts, Linda?
I think you're right on track. And just above what you have highlighted, this article, it says the Treasury, events in crypto asset markets have further highlighted the need for appropriate regulation to help mitigate consumer market integrity and financial stability risks. And that's where we're going. They're telling us there's going to be a systemic risk. We're going to experience this. The Bank of England is going to step in to rescue it. They're telling us this in advance.
They really are. And what I get from this is that if you have a private company that's running a private stable coin backed by the US dollar and possibly the pound, if you're not regulated, if you're not licensed, then you're going to be considered outlawed money. You're going to be considered a digital counterfeiter or something of that nature. That is how hard I believe this is going to continue to move. I really do. Now, this is an oldie but a goodie here, and shout out to Kevin Cage for giving this to us. But this is Jim Armanda, who worked for the clearinghouse, settles more than $2 trillion a day. What I want to do is give this moment right here out of the clip here, where Jim Armanda states that the clearinghouse, which settles more than $2 trillion a day, is a utility. It has been designated a utility that is systemically important financial market utility. That means FSOC and the U.S. Treasury have designated that company that particular classification. Let's listen to this real quick, and then I want to get your thoughts here when it comes to a class of stable coins and regulation all coming down the pipe here. Take a listen.
We operate as a utility. In fact, the Federal Reserve has designated us as a systemically important financial utility, and that word is the operative word. We don't operate for profitability.
There you go. Your thoughts, Linda?
I couldn't actually hear that, but maybe you could comment on that, Brad. Okay,
I'll comment on it because I forgot to release that so you could hear it. But that was the clip that we had played earlier where Jim Armanda talks about the, in fact, let me give it again. It's only a few seconds. 1 second. I want you to hear this and comment on it. Here we go.
Expect to reach every bank in the country.
Here we go.
We operate as a utility. In fact, the Federal Reserve has designated us as a systemically important financial utility, and that word is the operative word. We don't operate for profitability.
That is a big statement. Your thoughts, Linda?
Well, systemically important, again, we're talking about the whole system, and where we're going is a test of that system. Just like Terra was the first look into a stablecoin cratering, I believe the next one is Tether, and that is going to be a systemically important moment in the whole financial system that will usher in a solution. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think all of this is setting the stage for the Treasury, the Fed, and all proper agencies to chime in on systemically important designations, for the agencies to say we're going to need to consider adopting a value protocol to put these commercial bank stable coins and wholesale CBDCs on in order to guarantee that these things are properly regulated and monitored. Your thoughts?
Yes, and I believe that they're going to build a different system. You and I talked before we started about the fact that we're in a debt-based system now. And I think that the new system we're going to is going to be an asset-based system. So we're not going to build our currency on debt. You see, when the US, when the Federal Reserve issues currency, they are issuing debt. And we're not going to have that in the future, I don't believe. I believe that the new currency system is going to be asset-backed and is not going to be based on debt. How about you?
I think that's such a great point to make, because I think that's exactly where we're going. And I think if we're going to have that, I think with these commercial banks are going to have to launch a certain or put up a certain amount of reserves that are highly regulated, highly monitored and compliant. And I think we see that also with the wholesale CBDCs on the back end as well. And when you look at the size of these different areas in market, 55,000 banks, 5 trillion a day, 5,500 financial institutions, 1.8 trillion a day for the Fedwire. You know, the size of these different markets and payment systems and order of money and the order of magnitude that things are being handled with on a daily basis, there's no way in my mind that any introduction of some new financial piece to the puzzle, digital or otherwise, doesn't get a systemically important designation as the current pieces of the puzzle and payment system do now. Your thoughts?
I think when we look at these numbers, trillions, 5 trillion a day, 5,500 financial institutions, 1.8 trillion a day, these numbers to me speak scalability. You have to have something that is immensely scalable in order to handle this, which brings me back to when David Schwartz told us initially that when XRP was invented, they realized they had such a powerful technology. They looked for what's the best and most important use case that this could be used for. And it turned out to be cross-border payments. And that is just why I believe the XRP community has gravitated to XRP as an investment, because they recognize the potential, the power of this technology, the scalability, the green energy, the fast speed, the low cost, everything about this tells me that it's perfect to handle this market. What do you think?
I completely agree. And it's just like a starting point, right? Like there's so many other things that it can do. They're starting with this main point of entry with, you know, cross-border remittances and all of this, because they know that there's so much liquidity there tied in if they get it right. And I do believe that they've got it right. Now, let's take a look at this, because I want to skip. I had to move a panel around, but I want to start with James Wallace here, who I believe lays out here pretty good about a pretty good idea about what is happening. Now, we've always heard Ripple say they're starting with the smaller, more exotic corridors where it's difficult for banks to want to pre-fund these accounts with these particular small corridors that have a currency that's hard to hold on to, or it's extremely volatile in that area, or whatever the case is. Now we're going to hear James Wallace, the head of central bank engagement for Ripple, talk about 2 commercial banks in the UK and in the US going to launch their coins on the network. Let's take a listen to this, Linda. I want to get your thoughts here.
Currencies, in terms of native cryptos like XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, you know, they're not all the same, right? They're not all created equal. I think what's becoming much more popular in the industry now is more sustainable technologies. So the XRP ledger and XRP is, there's no mining or proof of work or proof of stake involved. So the computational cost of validating transactions is almost zero, right? Very, very low cost and very stable in terms of pricing. Stablecoins, again, not all created equal. You have a massive range from the algorithmic type stablecoins, We all know the Terra story from a few weeks ago. And then now what we're seeing emerging is, stablecoins being issued by regulated entities. So I can't give you the names yet, but there's 2 projects we're working on, one in the UK and one in the US, working with banks that are regulated, who will be issuing stablecoins, and the reserves will likely to be held at a central bank, in a central bank account. So very different from the algorithmic stablecoin. We as Ripple work across all of these technologies. And then, of course, you've got central bank digital currencies, which essentially is the highest form of digital currency, right? Issued by the central bank, backed by the central bank, the most secure form. As a company who's working across the payment space, we're embracing all of these, and we see they will all play their part in the future of money. Today, cryptocurrency is less than 1% of all the money. Central bank money is less than 10%. The rest is all commercial bank money. So it'll be interesting to see, in 5 or 10 years, how does that look when it's all digitized? Will stablecoins be 90% of the market and CBDCs 10%? Or will CBDCs actually be allowed to grow and be a much higher percentage of the money supply? I don't know. That's for the policymakers to decide.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Linda?
All right. Well, there's a lot in there, but I want to point out a few things. He says, not all cryptocurrencies are created equal. Boy, do XRP investors know that. We have the scalable one, the one that is green energy, et cetera. We all know that. He also talked about stable coins and algorithmic stable coins not being equal to other stable coins. That is directly in reference to the regulation that we think is coming in regard to stable coins, because we're going to have a systemic risk that's going to usher them in. Now, I want to add a quote from Brad Garlinghouse from a recent interview he did, where he said, central bank digital currencies are issued or potentially issued by a central bank. So they're not solving cross-border problems. They're solving domestic solutions. So I think that basically you have a Bahamas that starts the sand dollar. You have Bhutan, who is pegged to the US dollar, as is the Bahamas sand dollar. Behind the scenes, we have testing with the US dollar without them testing it in the US, if you will. So they're running these different central bank digital currencies behind the scenes on the private ledger. I think they've been doing this for 5 years. And I think he knows exactly what's happening, and as well as mention these secret projects that he's not going to tell us about. But also we know that the crypto market is going to $20 trillion, according to Brad Garlinghouse, in a few years. So this is going to be much, much bigger than where we are today. We're just at less than 1% use of cryptocurrency today.
I just think that's remarkable the way you laid that out. That makes so much sense to me. And I'm reminded from the Brad Garlinghouse comment that you made that David Schwartz not long ago has said that, if you don't have the domestic side of this right, it harms it is a detriment to the international cross-border remittance side. You've got to be able to tie in that domestic liquidity and be accessible to it, to be able to facilitate the international cross-border side.
Makes sense.
It really does. So what we come down to is this. This is a pretty fantastic comment from Wrath of Common here. He says, a theory, question. If XRP were to increase to, say, $10 with no escrow, $1 trillion at a high velocity with on-demand liquidity, wouldn't it act increasingly like a stable coin? Perhaps even almost USD pegged, given current FX routes today, or at least approach a global dollar, perhaps. Your thoughts?
Well, there is the possibility of an ESDR, which you and I have talked about. Is that something that we're looking at as a potential international or global dollar? Who knows? What do you think?
Yeah, you can't rule out the idea that, the SDR certainly wanted, or the IMF certainly wanted the SDR to be more successful back in the 60s than it's become. And this new digital age certainly allows the opportunity for that to happen. So I think that is a huge possibility of that being, or certainly playing a role to help aid the ESDR. Absolutely.
And for anyone who's not familiar with SDR, it's special drawing rights. And right now it's a 5-country grouping, if you will, that forms the SDR and in their currencies and allows for international trade. So that could be an electronic version that is brought in the future.
Absolutely. And, Anders L says a really great job here. The more volume that goes through XRP, the more stable it gets. The tighter the spread, the lower the volatility, stable the value. And isn't it such that if we go back to what James Wallace has said, and I won't play it again, but talking about commercial banks in major markets launching stable coins and having that be on the back of XRP means that you are obviously going to have your reserves, multiple assets, as we've talked about, because we're moving from a debt-based system to a multi-asset backed system. These reserves are held to regulation and compliance. That is going to be used on the ledger, then that is going to inform a price. And if everyone in the G7 and the G20 do it, and they all put up a certain amount of multiple assets to back these things, we now have really transitioned from the debt system to the asset-backed system, have we not?
That's right. And, it's something that Jimmy Valley had said, that the G7 agreed upon a particular price, he believes, and that's the first thing that you agree on is price.
That's right. That's right. And if you can guarantee the price, because look, let's face it. There are questions out here for another video. Why hasn't all the retail been bought up by a major central bank so they could say mine, all mine? Now I control the world with this new bridge money. And I think option contracts keep that from happening, but that's another video. But there's these other questions too, like, well, why have the banks used it really in full scale use? Because they haven't all agreed just yet to put the reserves up just yet to provide and inform a price for the asset XRP at this time. What I want to show you next, Linda, is this. It's from November 2021. Just really 6-7 months ago here we're talking about. And it is the World Bank referring to Ripple and XRP and XLM Stellar as, in fact, stable coins. That's how they see these two assets. And they offer stability with respect to their parity against fiat currencies. Two digital currencies that fall into this category are RippleNet's native currency XRP and Stellar Network's native cryptocurrency XLM. Your thoughts, Linda?
Well, I think our community is probably scratching their head saying, what, are you talking about a stable coin at 40 cents? Oh, heavens, no. Right? They know.
No, that's right.
It's not going to be. We all know that. And the as David Schwartz has said, it's easier to transfer money the higher the value that's placed on it. And he gave the example of moving $1 million and the ease if the crypto was priced at $1 million. Not to say that XRP is going to be $1 million someday. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that 40 cents we know is not where the true value of this is. And to have a stable coin to be used at the central bank level to move millions and over time trillions and quadrillions of dollars actually requires a much higher price than where we are today. Don't you think, Brad?
I really do. I really do. Okay, so I brought up this image here because, whether we're talking about, commercial bank stable coins or CBDCs, wholesale backend, however you want to see it, we're talking about a multi-asset backed system. Linda, talk about this for a second.
Well, when I look at this diagram, first of all, I think about this being at the country level. Now, currently, our money is with central banks in our countries, but I believe we're going to a system that will be based on the treasuries within each country. So when I look at this, this says to me the treasuries are going to put in reserves and create the asset-backed new currency. And that is why we have a fight on our hands from the central banks, from banks like JP Morgan, who wanted to create an alternate cryptocurrency with Ethereum because they could own it and they could control it. And in this version, where the treasuries are contributing, it's decentralized. No one's going to own it or control it. And that drives them mad because they want the monopoly. They want to own it. They know how valuable this is going to be. And I believe that's what caused ETHgate. That was the banker's coin. They supported that and they tried to do their own version of this and failed.
Oh, that's so well said. And the question left now is will we see, which I certainly believe, XRP grow into the role of a global stablecoin and eventually serve as an electronic SDR? Final thought, Linda.
Well, when I hear XRP as a stablecoin, that doesn't make me really excited as an investor, because to me, it sounds like there's some sort of limitation, but I know that's not what you mean. I think you're saying the high value and it stays at a stable level, which is a good thing for us. And going back to, again, Jimmy Valley's valuation, 35,000, let's say, per XRP is possible. We don't know what the price is, where they agreed, but we do know there's some higher price that makes much more sense for XRP. And once we get through regulation and we get clarity on where XRP stands, is it a currency? Is it a security? Is it a commodity? What is it? The proper regulations around it, it can advance to a high level value, which is what you're calling a stable coin, which would be an amazing asset for treasuries around the world to use.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, too, for people who understand where I'm currently at in the thought process on this, because all of this is a living, working thought experiment, right? And where I'm at in this is that, the collateral that's put up by these treasuries around the world, right? That you would not get access to 100% of your assets. Let's just say it's 75%. Right. So if there's a situation where you get into the 76% or whatever, you're going to be liquidated back down to get you right again. Right. And all this would be a way to inform a floor price or a price set for the asset XRP that could serve the payments and the settlement that the world needs currently to get us back on track to a multipolar asset-backed system and out of this debt-based system.
Fantastic. You said it.
Linda, thank you so much. This is always a blast, and we will do this again.
My pleasure. It was so much fun, Brad. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stick around, and I'll catch all of you on the next one.